In the early hours of the morning, while much of northeastern Japan was still asleep, a faint orange glow began to appear along the horizon. At first it looked distant, almost harmless. A small fire burning somewhere in the mountains. But as dawn approached, the glow grew brighter, the smoke grew thicker, and the flames began to spread. Driven by dry conditions and powerful winds, the wildfire moved rapidly through forests and hillsides, consuming everything in its path. What had started as a localized fire quickly transformed into a large-scale emergency, threatening homes, businesses, and entire communities. Residents described waking to the smell of smoke filling the air. Others recalled seeing ash falling from the sky like snow. Some had only minutes to leave. Many fled carrying little more than their most essential belongings. This is the Japan wildfire disaster, one of the most destructive wildfire emergencies the country has faced in recent years. As firefighters battle relentless flames and authorities issue evacuation orders, thousands of residents find themselves caught in a crisis that continues to unfold. The wildfire erupted in a heavily forested region where weeks of unusually dry weather had left vegetation vulnerable to ignition. Officials say strong winds quickly intensified the situation, carrying embers across large distances and creating multiple new fire fronts. What began as a single blaze soon became a rapidly expanding disaster. Within hours, flames had spread across vast sections of woodland. Trees ignited one after another. Entire hillsides became engulfed. Dense smoke rose thousands of feet into the atmosphere, visible from miles away. The fire moved with frightening speed, and communities in its path had little time to prepare. Emergency alerts were issued across affected areas as authorities urged residents to evacuate immediately. Sirens echoed through towns. Emergency messages appeared on mobile phones. Local officials went door to door, warning people to leave. For many families, the evacuation was chaotic. Roads quickly became congested as residents attempted to escape the advancing fire. Vehicles lined highways, smoke reduced visibility, and in some locations flames could already be seen approaching nearby hills. The danger was growing by the hour. As daylight broke, the scale of the disaster became increasingly clear. Entire sections of forest were burning. Large columns of smoke towered above the landscape. Fire crews arriving at the scene found themselves confronting extreme conditions. Strong winds pushed flames in unpredictable directions. Dry vegetation provided endless fuel, and rugged terrain made access difficult. Japan's Fire and Disaster Management Agency mobilized emergency resources from across the country. Hundreds of firefighters were deployed. Additional crews arrived from neighboring prefectures. Military personnel were placed on standby. Helicopters equipped with water buckets joined the response effort. The objective was simple: stop the fire. But the reality was far more difficult. Wildfires are among the most unpredictable disasters emergency responders face. A sudden shift in wind can change everything. A fire that appears contained can suddenly explode in size. And in this case, the weather was working against them. Throughout the day, winds continued to strengthen. Flames leapt across roads. Burning embers were carried far ahead of the main fire front. New fires ignited unexpectedly. Containment lines were repeatedly breached. Every gain made by firefighters seemed temporary. As the fire advanced, structures began to burn. Homes were engulfed. Storage buildings collapsed. Agricultural facilities were destroyed. Residents watched from evacuation centers as images of their communities appeared on television broadcasts. Many did not know whether their homes were still standing. Others feared the worst. The emotional toll was immense. Inside evacuation shelters, families gathered in uncertainty. Children sat quietly beside parents. Elderly residents waited for updates. Volunteers distributed food, blankets, and water. Television screens displayed live images of the disaster unfolding outside. Every update brought new concerns. Every report raised new questions. How far would the fire spread? How many homes would be lost? When would it finally end? Meanwhile, emergency crews continued their battle. Helicopters conducted repeated water drops throughout the day. Aircraft flew back and forth between reservoirs and active fire zones. Ground crews worked tirelessly to establish containment lines. Heavy machinery cleared vegetation in an attempt to slow the advance of the flames. But conditions remained dangerous. The combination of dry forests, steep terrain, and strong winds created an environment where even small fires could quickly become major incidents. Environmental experts noted that parts of the affected region had experienced below-average rainfall in recent months. Vegetation had become increasingly dry. Forests that normally retain moisture were now far more vulnerable. Under these conditions, a single spark can be enough. And once a wildfire begins, stopping it becomes extraordinarily difficult. As night approached, the situation became even more dramatic. The dark sky illuminated by flames. Entire hillsides glowed orange. Columns of smoke reflected the firelight. The landscape appeared almost unrecognizable. Residents watching from evacuation centers described the scene as surreal. Some compared it to a volcanic eruption. Others said it looked like an endless wall of fire stretching across the mountains. For firefighters, nighttime operations presented additional challenges. Visibility decreased. Terrain became harder to navigate, and exhaustion began to take its toll. Yet the work continued, because every hour mattered. Every structure protected mattered. Every community saved mattered. Authorities expanded evacuation zones as the fire continued to threaten additional areas. Thousands of residents were relocated. Schools, gymnasiums, and community centers were converted into temporary shelters. Emergency supplies were distributed, medical teams were deployed, local governments coordinated around the clock. The wildfire was no longer simply an environmental emergency. It had become a humanitarian one. As the days passed, damage assessments began to emerge. Thousands of hectares of forest had been destroyed. Numerous buildings had been damaged or lost. Infrastructure had been impacted. Power outages affected some communities. Road closures disrupted transportation networks. Economic losses continued to grow, and still the fire burned. Satellite imagery captured the scale of the devastation. Vast sections of once green forest now appeared blackened and scarred. Smoke plumes stretched across large portions of the region. The visual evidence was staggering. Entire landscapes had been transformed. Scientists say wildfires are becoming an increasing concern across many parts of the world. Rising temperatures, extended dry periods, and changing weather patterns are creating conditions that allow fires to spread more rapidly and burn more intensely. While Japan is often associated with earthquakes, tsunamis, and typhoons, wildfires are emerging as another serious threat, particularly during periods of drought and unusually warm weather. Experts warn that communities must adapt, improve preparedness, stronger early warning systems, enhanced forest management, and greater public awareness. All will play critical roles in reducing future risks, because once a wildfire reaches a certain size, options become limited. Prevention often proves far more effective than response. Back on the fireline, crews continued their efforts, day after day, hour after hour, battling heat, smoke, fatigue, and unpredictable conditions. Many worked extended shifts, sleeping only briefly before returning to the front lines. Their determination prevented even greater destruction. Yet the challenge remained enormous. Nature was showing its power, and humanity was once again being forced to respond. Tonight, many residents remain displaced. Some do not know when they will be allowed to return home. Others face the possibility that there may be little left to return to. Families wait for updates, communities wait for relief, and firefighters continue their relentless fight against the flames. The Japan wildfire disaster is more than a single emergency. It is a reminder of how quickly conditions can change, how rapidly a small fire can become a national crisis, and how vulnerable communities can be when extreme weather, dry conditions, and powerful winds combine. As authorities continue their response and investigations into the cause of the blaze, one thing remains certain: the scars left by this wildfire will not disappear quickly. Burned forests can take decades to recover, destroyed homes can take years to rebuild, and the memories of those who lived through the disaster may last a lifetime. For now, the people of Japan watch and wait, hoping for rain, hoping for containment, hoping for an end to the flames. But until that moment arrives, the battle against the wildfire continues.